You know, when it comes to Bitcoin, there's just no middle ground. You've got these financial legends calling it rat poison, and then you have others who see it as the single greatest investment of our lifetime. So what's the deal here? Is this some kind of world-changing technology, or is it a delusion of historic proportions? Let's break down the paradox at the very heart of the world's most controversial asset.
Okay, so to really get a grip on this whole fierce debate, we've got to start with the central paradox of Bitcoin itself. It's a story of two completely opposite, yet somehow equally compelling realities. On one side, you've got one of the most successful investors in history, Warren Buffett, and he's not mincing words. His critique is absolutely scathing. He sees it as fundamentally worthless, just a speculative gamble with no real value. But that's only one side of the coin.
Because then you look at the numbers, and they tell a totally different story. I mean, if you'd put $1,000 in the stock market a decade ago, you'd have about $3,000 today. That's pretty good. But that same $1,000 in Bitcoin, it would be worth around $400,000. That performance is so extreme, it forces you to ask, how can something called rat poison produce such astronomical returns?
And that question leads us right into the bull case, the core arguments from people who believe Bitcoin is really just getting started. And it all pretty much boils down to one incredibly powerful, unchangeable concept.
Think about it. Unlike our traditional currencies, which governments can basically print endlessly, Bitcoin has a hard-coded, fixed supply. That right there, that's the bedrock of its entire value proposition. True digital scarcity. And here it is, the magic number, 21 million. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, not one more, ever. That absolute cap is locked into the code, creating a predictable and finite asset in a world of, well, infinite money printing.
And look, this scarcity isn't some far-off idea. It's happening right now. Roughly 95% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist has already been mined. It's already out there. We're essentially all fighting over the last few slices of the pie.
So you take that scarcity, you add in more and more demand, and what do you get? You get performance that just dwarfs every other major asset class. I mean, sure, stocks and gold have done well, but Bitcoin's 35,000% gains since 2015? That's in a universe of its own.
And hey, this isn't just a bunch of people on their laptops anymore. The big money is here. We're talking about major corporations like MicroStrategy and Tesla holding it on their balance sheets. BlackRock, the biggest asset manager in the world, launched an ETF that's shattering records. Even some conservative pension funds are starting to dip their toes in. At this point, institutional adoption is no longer a question of if, but really, how much.
Okay, but that's only half the story. To really understand Bitcoin, you have to look at the other side of the argument. Because for every person shouting to the moon, there's someone else with some very serious and frankly pretty valid criticisms. For skeptics like Buffett, the biggest red flag is this. Bitcoin doesn't actually do anything. A company produces profits. A farm produces crops. Bitcoin, he argues, produces nothing. Its price is based entirely on the hope that someone else, the next guy, will buy it from you for more money down the line. And if you thought Buffett was harsh, his late partner, Charlie Munger, was even more blunt. He saw Bitcoin as this frenzied, speculative bubble, comparing it to people deciding they couldn't miss out on the opportunity to trade. Well, you can read it for yourself. He didn't pull any punches. Then you have the CEO of America's largest bank, Jamie Dimon, adding another layer to the criticism, calling it worthless and pointing out its use in illicit activities. Which is kind of funny, right? Because his own bank now actually allows its clients to buy it.
And these criticisms are backed up by some absolutely gut-wrenching volatility. We're not talking about small market corrections here. We're talking about catastrophic collapses where the value can get cut in half or even worse in a really short period of time.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, some of the most vocal critics are starting to change their minds. The billionaire investor Ray Dalio went from calling Bitcoin a bubble to calling it one hell of an invention. And when you see powerful figures like that do a complete 180, it makes you think, maybe the story here is evolving. And this evolving story has led to some of the wildest price predictions you've probably ever heard, pushing this whole conversation into truly mind-boggling territory.
So if you look down the road, the forecasts just become astronomical. Analysts are talking about prices hitting a couple $100,000 in the near term. But by the next decade, predictions of over $1 or even $2 million per coin start to become common in these bull case scenarios.
And this, right here, is the ultimate bull case. The argument is that every other store of value in history, gold, currencies, you name it, has always increased its supply whenever demand goes up. That ultimately waters down its value. But Bitcoin is the first asset in history that's immune to that. You can't just create more. It can't be inflated away.
So, with these wild predictions on one side and these equally wild risks on the other, how are you even supposed to think about all this? Well, the final takeaway might not be about price at all, but about psychology. So it seems the key is to protect yourself from your own worst instincts. You have to avoid getting overconfident when prices are soaring and not let fear or greed drive your decisions when things get scary. Ultimately, the people who consistently do well in this space are the ones who can hold on for the long term, right through all the chaos.
So a rational approach might look something like this. Only invest an amount that you'd be totally okay with losing completely. Maybe buy a little bit at a time, consistently, regardless of the price. And most importantly, create a plan and stick to it. Don't buy into the crazy hype, and definitely don't sell when everyone's panicking.
Which brings us right back to the ultimate question. After seeing the case for it and the case against it, where do you land? Is Bitcoin the future of money, a rocket ship to incredible wealth? Or is it all just a collective delusion, a massive bubble just waiting for its final devastating pop? The truth is, that answer is still being written.